Here, we'll start Houston. Gonna get going here.
All right, we'll have this is the March 19th Engineering and Zoning Professional Services RFP Workshop. It's 5:30.
Yeah.
Roll call.
All here except for Paul. And Rachel's not here for staff, which is fine. Neither is Kane. Wasn't sure if they were gonna show up at all. In regard to, I'll kind of go over briefly the documents sent out yesterday. There were, I think, 3 there that were, I don't know if anything else got posted, but the 3 main ones we're really looking at is the main workshop agenda, which will kind of broken down into 3 pages, about 12 different sections here. We'll really kind of get the opportunity to break down the RFP and what we want into it. There is a draft scope of work document. As we go through, we're gonna kind of be building a draft scope of work, if you will. So we'll be able to, it's more for us, but you can kind of see the process of the staff side, what we're looking at putting in and, what we'll need. And it's things we can talk about in the workshop. And then the third one is actually, it was a PDF attachment. I tried to find a zoning one, couldn't, but I found a RFP from Zimbrota from a few years ago. This is just a reference to how they would kind of look like coming out of the city once they're finalized, and how they could look going out to the different groups, if you will, once we put out. And it shows the different sections that we may want to consider: compensation, required content, all that kind of stuff. Obviously, again, this is for legal services, so it's slightly different, but same kind of thing. You'll start with the purpose and background. And then go into your scope of services and everything beyond that. So is there any questions about those documents right off the bat before we kind of dive into it?
I'm gonna run and get a pen, there's one in the office. Sure.
There should be some in a cup right by the window.
Okay, thanks. I forgot I didn't have that. I had it there.
Okay. Daniel, Marie, any questions on those documents I sent out?
No,
No, nothing
questions.
for me. Thanks for sending it. Sorry, Daniel.
No, you're fine. No questions from me about the documents. The only question that I guess I have is, with Paul being the person who requested the engineering, and then P&Z requesting the zoning, do we think that we need to have them available?
That's council's call. I mean, that's one of those things that was brought before council, was kind of decided at council to go to workshops for you guys to talk and discuss. This is, the RFPs really should be on staff to put together and do. Their input is always appreciated and welcomed from, especially like P&Z and stuff. But at the end of the day, I don't know that it necessarily falls on them, more so council, to make the decisions as to what would go into it or not. So
Nope, that works for me. I was just thinking along the lines of what we're looking for, what those specific people were looking for to trigger this process is more of what I'm. Jim, do you feel like you're able to speak on P&Z's behalf on this?
Well, I
Because
think
I'm not sure.
Yeah, both of us are there. I know that Kathy definitely wanted to do an RFP, and we wanted to combine the 2 together for what there is with that and this, because they make sense to go together.
I agree.
Yeah, and as the for the reason of due diligence, that's where I fall. I don't necessarily have the background of if there has been any historical shortcomings in the services that we received to justify. So I can't speak on any of that behalf, but just the due diligence portion, that's where I sit, I guess.
And I'll speak a little bit. I think we've had really good representation that there has been from Stantec with Phil. And I know the transition is a transition, no matter what there is when it comes to different people that there are behind it. We were looking along the line also, which is the whole thing of service is one thing, cost is another, response is another one. So it's all combined together with what's going on. But, you know, I mean, Stantec has, as, you know, like I said, we hadn't looked at this for basically 20 years when you go back through it, and I see the things on all the mayors and everything else. And I'm with you off of that, and I'm not saying that Stantec shouldn't have the business. What I'm saying for us, I think it's good for us to be good stewards of what there is to take a look. You know, after 20 years, I think it makes sense to address some of these things. And of course, that would be a part of it if you're looking at what we're doing.
Okay, yep. That's fine by me. I just didn't have any other background to provide from the P and Z Act.
Well,
So,
okay, going back just before is we went up for, when we were doing the zoning, we went up for an RFP for bid for rewriting the zoning aspect of it. We had 3 people that had responded. We listened to their presentations of the 3 companies that there were. And we thought that it's only fair to give the final 2 another look, because we wanted to make sure that we were addressing it correctly, you know, at that time. And that's where we went up with that, which we did the 2 semifinalists looking at it. And that was a decision that was made when we went with WSB with that. You know, so.
Was that just for the, excuse me, was that just for the code workup, or are you talking about zoning services for the city? Because
No, it's just for just the code.
Okay.
Okay, that's all we did with it. And the 2 were Stantec and WSB were the 2 that were the 2 finalists that were there. And WSB just really blew Stantec away on that last go around. It was one of those things that we said, there was no comparison. I'll put it that way, which kind of was disappointing to us. Okay. You know, so that's why we wanted to give Stantec another shot to make sure. So, you know, like I said, you know, this is looking openly at everything, and you know, if we come back, and believe me, Stantec's got a history. I'm not taking anything away from that, but you know, I think that we need to, as council, after 20 years, to really take a little bit of a dive into this and take a look.
Okay, so, you look at the documentation,
Yes, I did, absolutely.
we discussed this in April of last year.
We did, and we were gonna do an RFP before, and then he said, okay, look, I've been basically kind of overcharging. We can do a little bit of difference and adjusted things. But it really wasn't a total look at everything that there was with an RFP, especially with what's going on with planning and zoning. Marie was gonna say something, so.
Maria,
I was, oh, go ahead.
there was a word choice there. Joe did not say he was overcharging. It was using less of his services and using more of the younger employees for a different rate.
Okay.
So I just want to make sure that's clear for the record for that, because he wasn't overcharging by any means. It was simply his rate as the senior engineer is higher than that of, and so he brought back a structure that would incorporate the use of more junior personnel than him on the projects. So, sorry, Marie, go ahead.
No, and I think we need to center on what's working well and what's not working well in this conversation versus we're just focused on cost, which cost is a component that we can evaluate, you know, whoever responds to RFP against, but that shouldn't be our leading factor.
I agree 100% with that as well. I just think that yes, I agree with that, what you're saying, Marie.
I just have a couple comments from an administration point of view. You know, when you guys requested you wanted to have workshops, or you wanted to have a time to talk about RFP and all of the things, we were kind of unsure also, like, what are the reasons? So administration spent 2 days going back through the documents. We did review, we never got a request from planning and zoning to have any financial review. We've never provided anybody any of those numbers, like year to year to year, what are the finances, year to year to year. There haven't been any like negative, poor service ramifications, nothing. I mean, we went back and looked all the way back to 2011, and I did try to attach most of the documents. Yeah, it's just to say that we haven't done anything and we haven't reviewed Stantec services in 20 years is not true. We did this in 2025, we did it in 2024, we did it in 2023. I think we did it in 2017, and then it goes, I also found documentation that we went over this in 2011. Maybe not in P and Z and maybe not in council, but admin and some minutes, council certainly did talk about this. And there were contracts that were renewed and renewed and renewed and renewed year after year, and there was never any question up until then. So I sort of agree, like the very first question under workshop purpose and desired outcomes, establish clarity on why the city is wanting to issue an RFP and what does that success look like? As from an administrative place, it would be really a kick in the teeth to both us and the administration and for all of the work that our relationships that we've grown and we're confident in working with each other. I think for P and Z to say we need an RFP without asking for some information or review from staff first was a little bit shocking is all. I think I would like to have a better reason. Like financials we can provide. If you're looking at what we spent just last year, and that was a driving factor, I can tell you we still have almost $300,000 coming back in reimbursements from PFA that are not in those financials yet. So if you are looking at a number from 2025, those are not correct numbers to base anything off of at this point either.
We're not looking at the PFA when we were looking at stuff with planning and zoning. So that isn't a part of it. And the financial is a part. The rest of it is again, I'll let Kathy speak as the chair and we can get Kathy involved with it. And I wish she would be on or can talk about that too at this point. But that's where us as a group had wanted to do an RFP and thought that let's just take a look at everything that's going on with Stantec. And again, just looking at things and if you're with a company, and again, I no negatives on what there is with Stantec. So I'm not out to try to go that way, but on any company, if you have a contract for 20 years and you see the adjustments that there are with it, yet you never go out to see what's really outside there, are you really using the money that there is for cities money wisely on anything that there would be? And that's where I'm coming from. Like I said, I understand these things. I think that there's a few other companies that might give us a real easy indication by looking at some things to see if it's even worthwhile. And one of my thoughts was even looking at what we did at City Council this last meeting that we had. And it's looking at the paving situation that was put out in the chart that was there. If you even turned around and looked and said, okay, this might be an example, take everything out that of course is there and say, okay, companies were looking at doing something. Does this, what would you come back with to give us a simple look before we got more in depth, just out of curiosity, okay? Okay, otherwise, I mean, we can go more in depth, but I'm just looking at something that says, okay, it's worth it, or it's not worth it to even go any further.
Well, you said a couple of things already that I haven't seen the documentation. I think documentation is important. You've made two comments. One, there was shortcomings received. I'm not sure what those shortcomings are, if they've been documented, shared with Stantec or administration. Second item, you said, what's going on with Stantec? Can you expound on what you mean by those comments?
Well, when I said what's going on with Stantec, like I said, I don't have negatives on Stantec. Okay, all I'm looking at is as a council to look after 20 years and not looking. So if there was something that was off on year 5 and it continued on to year 20, you know, we would be making something, but we still don't know what's really out there in the marketplace to take a look.
So, you know, we mentioned, or Melissa mentioned the number of times we have reviewed the contract and getting upgrades. That's all part of an ongoing relationship that a city has with a professional organization.
Mhm.
Yes, it's a professional organization and we're dealing with professional engineers. And it's not like we're looking for porta potties or plowing or something like that. It's they provide a professional technique to the city and what they've contributed to us in the means of our water and sewer projects over the years, streets. I mean, there is some credibility, there's integrity, there's a history there. I mean, we could, for example, if it happened, we decide we're gonna go with company XYZ because they're 10% less money or something like that. We've lost all the history. We've lost all the history, we've lost all the professionalism of what went into the design of the sewer system. And we're starting from scratch with a new company XYZ to pick up the design from know how it's operating. So to me, that's a very key piece of the puzzle for, it wasn't working for some reason, it was a bad design and it's just complete failure. Absolutely. We need a different professional company. So we have Stantec. Stantec is well known. It's in the documents that we have here provided, but I just, you know, it takes a lot of money and it's it just be a lot of trouble if we were to even do it. And,
Rylan, Daniel's got a question if you got when you're done.
go ahead.
So Daniel.
All right, sorry, I don't want to necessarily turn this into a who's right and who's wrong on requesting this, because I absolutely agree that if we haven't asked for competitive bids from other companies in 20 years, whether we've looked at the financials or not, I think that's, correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, that's pretty much what you're saying, is we haven't looked for competitive bids and with equivalent services. I have no issue with any of the work that Stantec has done, but from the due diligence aspect of requesting competitive bids, that's where I'm at with this. But I just wanted to get the history if there was anything else to add, and that's where I feel like with Paul putting the engineering on the agenda and really the request coming from Kathy over the last couple of years for P&Z zoning service support, that's where I think their input could be valuable into clarity here. I also agree with both what Marie and Ryland have said, is that this can't be just a dollars decision. This has to be take all of what's currently going on into consideration. But to find competitive bids, there's absolutely nothing wrong with attempting to see what other equivalent services are offering. I mean, that's where I'm at.
So, and to go off of that was my interpretation from sitting through planning and zoning meetings, was it simply just hasn't been done in X amount of years. And the city should go out for bids
Yes, that's exactly my take on it as well. Like, not that anybody's done anything wrong, or staff hasn't done due diligence, or Stantec hasn't done due diligence. It's strictly we have not asked for competitive bids from outside companies, and that's just not. That's a way of doing business in the past, right? It's not current way of doing business.
And
So,
and Daniel, that's exactly where I'm coming from as well. Absolutely.
okay. Okay.
So I think we understand we've established why the city it would be issuing an RFP, right? Is because this hasn't, I mean, simply has not been looked at and reviewed in 20 years. And to go out and get, I guess, for lack of better words, a feel of what's out there, right? Of services that can be provided, and at what cost. But, you know, there is, we all know that there's more than just services and cost. There is the background that plays a part of that, right? So I think that comes into the next part of the first part of the objective here is, what does success look like for us, right? Is success simply money? Is success, are we getting out there and realizing, okay, everybody's about the same cost? We're, 10,000 difference from the high end to the low end. Well, in that range, we have Stantec, who has 20 years of service. Does that added into what does success look like is, history. So I think that's the next question we need to talk about is, what does that look like for us? What does the success of an RFP here really get us? What are we looking for?
Well, and using that example of $10,000 on the other, being a sales manager in sales my whole career, you would be hoping that your service that you've done in the past is worth more than something that would be that way. So, again, it's seeing what's out there. Yeah,
I think we almost need to figure out what our criteria is and what that weighting would look like as RFPs come forward. Cost again is one piece of that, but what are the other problems that we're trying to solve, and what is that weighting of some of those? Because again, we want to make sure that we're not just like shiny object bringing in someone new and not saying we're there, but we also need to kind of hold ourselves accountable for when there may be a price difference, like what is that limit, and what is, reputation and longevity within the city. They've done past work and it's been great. They've tried to work with us on cost saving measures. Like, I think we should think about what are some of those criterias that we would weight this against. And again, I think cost is a piece, but probably not the driving factor. Because again, there may be a fluctuation in price, but I just want to make us think that just because it's a little bit cheaper, that might not be something we want to do long term. But again, I totally agree. If we haven't looked at this competitively for 20 years, it's probably time to do that. And Santec again has the option to come back through and bring that forward. And then they have kind of that competitive advantage already because they've already been supporting the system in the city. So again, I think maybe thinking about what we would weight these against might help us maybe focus even a little bit more on not just cost.
Yep, so that gets into section B there, number 3B, or what are our desired outcomes for this, working on this RFP, right? We talked about cost predictability is probably one of those, not a driving factor, but is one of those things. I put in here a variety of things with question marks, right? Like, I don't know, this is one of those things we're here to talk about, but there's some of the things that typically come up with planning and zoning, and we can go through this, we can add to this list, take off of this list. We can speak to some of these items as staff. And I guess I'll start us off with that, even the first one, improved responsiveness. I personally have not had any issues with responsiveness from either our zoning or staffing, or with our zoning or engineering. So I think we would want to maintain that level of responsiveness, right? They're not necessarily improving it, but simply maintaining that responsiveness. And that responsiveness looks very good from our end. When I can reach out to our engineer or our zoning official and hear back with them, usually within the same day, if not the next day. And they will, we'll work throughout the day, multiple emails, phone calls, to be able to do that. So for me, that responsiveness, like I said, doesn't need to be improved. From the staff point, I guess Mel can talk a little bit on that, but I think we just need to maintain that level of active response from whoever we have.
I think that that's a very good baseline on what you're talking about with this stuff, that it needs to be that. No, and I'm sure you're right, Mel, with what goes on. So again,
I hear what all you guys are saying, like I get the other side of it too. I just would ask that as we continue to do workshops or it's in P and Z or at council, just that council would be respectful and remember that the people who you are asking to administrate these projects and work with the planners and the people that are putting the pen to the paper every day, that you're taking our work and our time into consideration too. That's really what I was getting at, is it's one thing to say it at a table and it sounds good and this and that, but administering or facilitating what we do with planning and engineering and what Public Works does with engineering is substantial. And so I just would ask that you guys keep us in mind.
As we go through these.
So can I maybe interject on that? I think that's an important piece. So I appreciate Mel for you raising that. So I'm just going to ask this question. With everything going on right now, with Jason departing, and we're trying to figure out what the structure looks like in the city, is this the right time to do this? I mean, I don't want to kick the can down the road, but I also want to acknowledge what Mel just said, and I think it's important. This is going to take commitment and time. And do we have that with everything else going on in transitions? And if we're not going to do it with full intent, then I think we should wait.
It's not ideal timing. Thank you for recognizing that. But that doesn't mean that, when we kind of get everything lined up, that later this year, it could be even still this year, that we could discuss it again if we are in a place where we can do that. My personal opinion in administration is I would not do anything with it right now. It's going to put added stress on us that are going to be spread thin for some time.
That's a very, very good point that you're making off of that. And it might make sense to delay this for a while till we get everything organized,
Phase 1B is critical, and we've approved, council has approved engineering or Stantec to proceed with our feasibility plan. And, to me, that's very important that we finish phase 1B with Stantec. That's always been the plan, is to have complete sewer system for the complete city. And they're integral part of that. They've been recognized, the state of Minnesota, with the project that they have done so far, with the award that we received. And so I think that's a very important piece of the puzzle as far as looking at the outcomes. And one thing about the outcomes, that we just, on this very first one, responsiveness. We know what Stantec has done for us and will continue, hopefully. But if company XYZ comes in and they say, yeah, we can do that, maybe faster. Well, are they telling us what we want to hear? Or how do we qualify such statements when we're comparing them to what we have with Stantec?
And that's what getting into this process will look like, right? Because as you go down, and this is not something I ever expected, even if moving forward, we would have it done today or anything like that. But that's where you would get into how are you going to develop qualifications and evaluations. And, a lot of it comes into, looking at those kind of things, having a skill to grade off of a matrix, if you will. Well, also, a lot of times you're going to look at references. So, you can ask for a list of city references that they've worked with or projects they've done to be able to communicate that. Yeah. And at the end of the day, I mean, I don't know, you may get fluff, you may not get fluff. I mean, it's how many times is a friend put you down in your past as a reference and you're like, yeah, they're a great person. You hope for the best, you do your due diligence, and at the end of the day, you make the best decision with the information you have before you. So.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily want to put this off for 4 years or 5 years. I think it's got to be something that's got to be done this year. So, the 1B I understand, but anybody can pick that up and move forward with that if that's the situation, which would be a part of them taking a look at it as well. You know, so I mean, those are all a part of how we want to look at it as a city. But again, I think that we need to do it maybe, and what you were saying, you know, Mel, is very true at this timing right now. That this is a lot to put on a plate that there is, and taking a breather for getting things organized and digging back into it in maybe the middle of the summer or something where things are more at ease, and more stable.
You're gonna.
Well, you got the
That's the
budget,
worst
I know that, I understand that
We'll
way.
be looking towards the end of the year.
Okay, but I'm just saying, but I think it's something that needs to be looked at and not kick that far down the road. I think we've got to be responsive and look at it as a council, so.
And maybe it's something like, and I agree, maybe it's like a September, October conversation because it's still a little bit, and maybe it's September or even finding a time in late August so we can have Kathy or the chair of P&Z, and then Paul here too, because again, I think we need to focus on what we're trying to solve, as well. And I just want to make sure that we're thinking about it thoughtfully. But we also need to make sure that our admin staff can focus on keeping the lights on. And this probably isn't the hugest priority on their plate. And we should just be cognizant of that, as well as if we bring additional staff in, right? They may have a different line of sight and or things that we should consider. It also gives us kind of the ability to bring some outside perspective in of things that maybe we haven't considered as well within new staff coming into the administration functions.
You know, I think what you put down here, Jason, as you went through this was very good. Okay, I really do. I think it's a great start on looking at things. So,
Absolutely.
you know, I think that's excellent. I think the past, what you put in for the past history, for that information, the work that's been done for you, Melissa, too, on what you did. Thank you. I think that's going to be advantageous as we look at the point when it's the right time to do it.
Right, and I wasn't necessarily diving deep to plead my own case, but just to provide a full, you know, kind of scope, a full vision for you guys when you're, you know, reviewing and trying to make decisions. There's a significant amount of documentation that exists that is favorable to all, favorable to the city, maybe favorable to Stantec, favorable to staff, or maybe not. You have to take what you will from it.
No, I think that this was, or is, I won't say is definitely a good stab at getting the initial start point. Daniel, Marie, comments?
Yeah, I think we can keep it right in our back pocket as we think about how do we not kick the can too far, but how do we, when we re-engage in this conversation, I think it's a really great starting point. I think the other thing that we could do so it doesn't seem paused is maybe we ask Kathy and Paul or whoever if they could send us some documentation of maybe what they're considering some of these. So maybe even those questions in that first half of what success looks like, maybe we do that asynchronously and they can provide that feedback. So if we can't get them on the meeting, right, we have some of their talking points that we can structure that. So maybe that doesn't feel like we're kicking it too far down the road without listening and hearing them. That could be another avenue, is do some stakeholder interviews and try to capture it asynchronously.
I think that's good. Daniel?
Yeah, I agree. I think the template that Jason and Mel have put together is kind of what we want to move forward with, but I don't necessarily think that the timing without the information and the feedback from those specific folks is what we need to be doing right now. And when our staff can get a little bit caught up, end of year, I think that's we can work on, like Marie said, start putting the pieces together, start working on that checklist, and then move in that direction a little slower. So that's where I'm at. I'm fine with that decision as well.
I think from staffing side, if you wanna look at time frame, you know, with all the work that we have to do as staff here, especially coming into that time of year, we all know September is the preliminary budget. So I would recommend an end of September, October to start having those group meetings again, workshops again. Cause there's gonna be a lot of work over the summer and into that building up into September. So your staff is going to, you know, be extremely busy and work with that portion. But once you get through that initial budget, the pressure kind of eases off on that. You know, you come into the end of construction season at that time. There's a lot of things that start to back off the plate to allow breathing room.
I was just gonna mention that too. But construction season in the summer, we got streets and roads projects going on. It all
If we
adds
can
up real
get
quick.
this stuff done in April or the meeting, you know, the new zoning codes, construction is going to happen. There's gonna be groundbreaking this summer. There's going to be things moving forward. So
I think too, is we look at the administration standpoint, we need to keep Public Works in mind because they have, if anybody, they probably have a stronger relationship with Stantec and can provide input too of what things we should look at if we're gonna put something together.
and this is a great, you know, take this stuff here and, you know, in your time, start filling in, you know, write down your ideas like you do with Kathy and them to start filling this out and putting it down so you guys have this ready to go when you come back together to discuss it. And, you know, can start working on it with everything already there and not just come in and sit down and then try to walk through it. You know, now that we know, okay, we're gonna push this down the road to October, we've got, you know, 6.5 months to start filling in these questions. And how you as individuals view these and would prefer, you know, what kind of things you would like to see and whatnot. So that does give you a little bit of time to work off of this as a template for that, so.
Yeah, I agree with that, Jason. I think that's a really good point is we can, if we're delaying this for a certain period of time, we can use that period of time to compound notes and specific examples. And that even if we stay with Stantec and aren't moving off, that's still valuable information for them for growth with us as well. So that's wonderful suggestion.
I agree. That's good. Well, with that, I make a motion. Adjourn.
Yeah, I guess that's fine.
Huh?
Did we start with the motion?
No, I made a motion, yeah, so. No, we didn't start with a motion, but I was just trying to say for a workshop, I think that. Yeah, I think it's just a good place to put it, as long as we're all in agreement, so.
Are we
Yeah.
gonna cancel the next ones then?
Yeah, if there's any other ones,
You just had one that was in 2 weeks, it was on a Monday night, or was it next Monday night?
It
So
was
the
the
20th.
30th.
Tuesday, the 31st, that's for zoning.
No, there was a Monday before the Tuesday one, there was one.
23rd.
The
Oh,
30th.
okay, I'm getting two different answers here.
The 31st was the date that you guys chose at the last workshop to continue on with the ordinances.
Yeah,
Then it would have been the 30th, because I thought it was the Monday before that, so.
Correct. I have a 30th RFP
30th, we would cancel.
workshop.
Yes.
I hold that date and time. I spoke with Joe yesterday before the meeting. There was something he wanted to discuss or before the council meeting and it didn't get brought up. I know he's got some information on something that he wanted to talk about. I am drawing a blank on it right now. And we figured it might be best to do in a workshop to give you guys time to digest and like talk about it. So I'll talk with Joe, figure out what that was and if that date works for him on the 30th to still be able to do that. So if that works, we could hold that date for now. And then I'll send something out hopefully tomorrow and let everybody know like, yep, this is what this is gonna be for and about, or we can release it and have a free night.
Okay.
So.
Very good. Good
That'll work.
job, you two, for putting this stuff together.
Thank you, Jim.
did it very,
A lot of work.
No.
I know, that's what I appreciate it. Good.
Yeah, I think there's going to be value in taking our time with this.
So. especially when we've done it for a while, so that's good. All right, well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, for hopping on here and our guests for hopping on as well. Sorry I wasn't as fruitful, but you know our timeline now.
Yep.
Take that back and work with that. So, all right, appreciate it, guys.
Have a good
Thank
night.
you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.